Hi, everyone. When I was a little girl, I did a language class, Japanese, and it was very difficult and I failed. And my mother said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "It's too hard. I can't do this." And she said, "Don't ever again tell me you can't do something." So now she regrets saying it. So she says, sometimes she says, "Don't you ever think you can't do anything? Don't you think sometimes that this is not worth doing?" But I remind her that she was the one who told me that you can't never say you can't do anything. And in fact, it's only that something which is more difficult, which is more worthwhile. So if you think you can, you can. So when you see something happening in front of you, what do you do? In my case, I saw sand mining happening in front of the house where I grew up. I'd spent all my childhood holidays there. I had, uh, I had a great deal of feeling for this place. And of course, I didn't want in any way that my beach should disappear. So I saw how the land was going backwards. I saw how the sand was being eroded. I saw these deep craters in the sand. I saw how when we walked on the beach at night, which we used to do regularly, we would fall into the craters. So what do? You go, of course, and you complain to the authorities very naively, because I knew nothing about the authorities as a mother of young children. And the authorities laugh at you. And they say, "Well, this is a beach. There's plenty of sand. Sand comes in every day. Why are you worried? Why are you complaining? Why are just go home and look after your children. Don't bother about such things." And then finally he says, "We don't know who's mining the sand anyway." And I say, "Well, it's strange because the whole village knows who's doing it. And not only does the whole village know, but they've actually told me to keep away from them because they're important politicians of the area." So he says, "Well, in that case, you'll have to catch them red-handed because that's the only way we're going to take action." So, of course, what do you do then? You go and stop a truck when you're told that they're out there mining sand at midnight. And it didn't go well. Um, I don't think this is what my mother really meant. And I don't think that when you take an issue of this kind, which nobody knows about, which nobody is willing to tackle, which nobody is willing to even talk about, that you're going to get any kind of guidelines as to how you're supposed to tackle it beyond these kind of vague statements, "Go catch them red-handed," which um, does seem now in hindsight and didn't go well, because when I stopped the truck the first time, I got away with it, and they actually stopped mining sand for a period of time. But when I stopped the truck the second time, the politician's son was in charge of the truck, and they actually attacked me and put me in hospital with a paralyzed hand. Um, so I didn't know at that time that this kind of issue would lead to this kind of thing. Nobody knew it. This is in 2004. And uh, then what do you do? So if there's so many things that were unexpected, unseen, caveats of the unseen. This is not what I had expected, that I'm going to end up in hospital. So I then started gathering data about sand mining, because of course then what you can do is give up because it's too dangerous, or you can decide to continue because you've realized that this is an issue where someone is actually willing to attack you to this level. So you, having been told there's nothing you can't do, you start gathering data and realize that there isn't any. So then you have to generate the data. And how do you generate the data? In those days, the only way to generate the data was by going to various sites and taking photographs, which of course was not a very sensible thing to do. But that data then became the basis for the first public interest litigation on sand mining. And so again, without knowing what I was doing, without knowing too many lawyers, without knowing anything about how public interest litigation was to be filed, I filed this litigation. And in the, while filing litigation, when you file litigation, this was actually not my first litigation. My first litigation was on sand mining, was on noise pollution. And sand mining is a rural issue, which happens a little bit outside the city mostly. Noise pollution happens in the city. But while working on both, you realize that actually the kind of steps that you take, the tools at your disposal are the same. And they apply, to me, they applied to these two very different issues that I took up, noise pollution and sand mining, but they basically come down to this, that we have the law, which everybody is supposed to follow, which means public interest litigation in India. We have advocacy, which means appealing to the good conscience of government, administrators, law enforcers. And we have awareness, which means bringing this issue to greater knowledge. So this is filming for a film called Line in the Sand, which was made by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. It was made, so the first attack on me was in 2004. This film was made in 2017. So it also means that you have to keep on working at things, because when you're taking up an issue without any roadmap, without any guidelines, purely on intuition, without any knowledge even, you just have to keep trusting that you're going to take the next step and the next step and the next step, and that it will somehow lead somewhere, even if you're not sure where. Of course, that's easier said than done, because then after filing the first public interest litigation and getting an order that sand mining is banned in the whole coastal districts of the state of Maharashtra, I was, these things then start getting reported by the press, not because of sand mining one cares about, but because of the fact that I was attacked. So the first reports were on the attack, and then I was attacked a second time, because after the court order banning sand mining, I started getting calls from people who were affected by sand mining, villagers. So I realized that, and they said to me, please come here and see, you sit in Bombay in your ivory tower, keep filing public interest litigation, nothing changes on the ground. So I went there and I was attacked. Took the first photographs of sand mining at a large industrial scale at Mahad, and in 2010. And I was again attacked. This time the intent was to kill. There was an accident, engineered accident on a bridge with a 100-foot flow. Again, there were all kinds of influential people involved. The police didn't want to help. And again, my family, my daughter said, Mom, you're great and all that, but you need to stay home and start cooking. And, but again, I remember my mother saying, don't say you can't. So you keep working, you keep doing it instinctively. And then fortunately for me, after the first attack, we had set up a group called MITRA, Movement Against Intimidation, Threat and Revenge Against Activists, and had filed public interest litigation in the court to protect activists working in the public interest who were being threatened by vested interests. And the very next day, again by fluke, because no one knows how these things happen in this world, again by fluke, by some divine providence or whatever, that case was the next day and we got help from the court. The other thing which made it very clear that it's not you who's working, it's not me who's working, it's some unknown way that things happen, is the way this accident happened. That I had been, on a site visit like this, I would never drive myself. A driver would be driving and I would be sitting in the back because there were journalists with me, there were local villagers with me, and we would be discussing the case. But it so happened that after we took the photographs on the creek and got back into the car, I had this feeling that somehow things were not right. And I don't know where this feeling came from. It was completely instinctive. And for the first and only time in my life, I told my driver, I said, please move, I am going to drive. And he was shocked, he was surprised. And he said, why? And I said, I don't know, I just think I want to drive. My husband is a dirt track rally racer driver, and he had just a little bit before that, and of course through all the years of our marriage, he had been giving me tips how to drive on these very, very mountainous ghats, dirt track roads. And when we started being followed by these guys who were trying to who first stopped us and threatened us and then started following us, and this truck actually crashed into us, I'm 100% certain that firstly, we would never have escaped that lonely area had I not been driving, because they couldn't catch up with me. And I had to do some maneuvers, off-road driving, to actually keep ahead of them when a second car came head-on and nearly crashed into us. And then when we got to the truck, I'm also certain that that truck's instructions were to push us over the bridge. It would have been an accident. We would have fallen 100 feet below, and they would have said, oh, she was driving rashly, which is exactly what the police said when we went to the police station. And they wanted to book me for rash driving, rather than to book these people who were trying to kill us. So you don't know what's going to happen, what's going to come out of what. You keep working. I can't say this is a way that I would advise anyone. I don't think this is what my mother meant. But nevertheless, this happened. I learned a lot of lessons from it. Again, these common issues, noise pollution and sand mining. So how do you bring them up to 4? One way is by being attacked, but of course a simpler way is by simply making it more and more like with noise pollution where there was no attack, to just keep talking about it again and again and again until people get the message. So this is training the police, because of course it's the enforcement authorities which are ultimately going to take action. You can get all the court orders in the world, but unless you have enforcement, nothing works. And after the very first public interest litigation which I had filed on noise pollution, my lawyer said to me that if you don't get this order banning loudspeakers in silent zones enforced, you have wasted all our time. We've all worked pro bono for you. And I didn't know what to do, but I realized that the way was to train the police. And so this is in a training session with the police. And there are, of course, other ways, as I said, teaching people, conducting drives, getting people to volunteer. In cities like Mumbai, there are no volunteers who are just ordinary people capable of holding banners on the road only. They are all professionals, and they can contribute professional expertise. So they have all contributed various things. Campaigns have been done free of cost by advertising agencies. Lawyers have worked free of cost. People have worked free of cost in every field. And this is the public participation and awareness that you need to generate. So you need to generate the data. In the case of sand mining, it was photographs of illegal sand mining sites and encouraging other people to tell us. In the case of noise pollution, because there was no data there either, it was actually getting this meter, which is such a simple device, it's a handheld device, and generating the data which was later used in the courts. This is telling people on the street celebrating a festival how they themselves are being affected. They have, in the city of Mumbai, they have really stepped up. I was shocked to know later that people who had been my staunch adversaries later decided to join me. And that's what makes things a public movement. When you say in the case of noise pollution, when the Ganpati Mandals, the state government, they declared 2018 as a year of no honking, in spite of the fact that they were the ones who never wanted to take noise pollution seriously. In fact, during the first conferences, I was told I was wasting the police's time. One police officer actually refused to speak when given the mic because he said, you have wasted our time bringing this non-issue to us when we have far more serious issues. Now they have changed their minds. They are taking up these issues. I'm very grateful to them, and it's the people ultimately who make these causes. It's up to us to create awareness, and this is creating awareness and data. From 2004, from the attack, the public interest litigation, in 2012, I presented the issue of sand mining to the UN for the first time, and the UN, who said that coastal issues were some of the most serious issues they had on their agenda, didn't have any documentation on sand mining. It took them until 2019 to come out with this report, which is the first ever global report on sand mining. I was honored to contribute substantially to this report about the actual situation on the ground in India, which in spite of so many court orders is still not good. We are losing sand. We are not taking measures to think of the alternatives which are feasible, which the IIT Bombay says that you can recycle the entire garbage dump, legacy waste, what they call in Mumbai, and get enough aggregate to substitute the entire sand mining of the country, which they have quantified both the sand requirements as well as the garbage dump availability, which would solve so many issues at once. The garbage issue of which India faces, the air pollution issue of garbage burning, the sand mining issue, and the UN has put these things in their report and recommended that India has the potential to lead the world in these kind of technologies. So we have the solutions, we have the ways. It's a question of taking an issue from something saying, oh, the sea brings in plenty of sand, to recognizing that, no, actually the sea doesn't bring in plenty of sand because it's a huge global issue. There is a transnational trade. And the UN has taken it up. The government of India still hasn't taken it up adequately. We still have policies which are unenforceable, but we do have to stand up in spite of the problems with standing up. Again, in 2019, noise levels during the festival season was at their lowest in the last 15 years since I've started recording data. Again, this is because of people's inputs, the government, the police, all of whom partnered, and most importantly, the noisemakers themselves, who came to realize that, yes, it is an issue. They do have to take action. They do have to do something. It's very heartening to know that these things can happen from something which nobody knows. Even today, if you ask me, what's your next step? It will be very difficult to say because it's constantly shifting, moving, changing. You don't know what's happening. But you have to just keep trusting, hoping for the best, keep working, something happens. So what are the challenges that we face in future? We don't know what the challenges are going to be. Just like when I started these challenges, I didn't know what the challenges would be. I didn't even know these were challenges. I just did them because they happened to be there in front of me. So we don't know what the actual challenges are going to be. But we do know that there is some global challenge on climate change, of which sand mining is a contributing factor. There are so many other contributing factors. We do know that we have come to this situation because of mismanagement, misunderstanding, misrepresentation, vested interests, so many other things that my generation has been responsible for and that the younger generation is going to then bear the burden of. We also know that these are going to be likely technological-driven solutions because, for example, sand mining, as I said, you can have the whole garbage dump as the source of replacing natural sand if only you come up with the engineering technology, the theory, mainstreaming it, commercializing it, as has been done for, when I was young, it was considered that without oil and coal, the world will stop. Today, we all know it has not stopped. We need this to be done for sand, which is the second most extracted material in the world after water. We really need to do it. We need to do it for noise pollution, where we are stuck in the technology of yesterday. We're using loudspeakers, we're using horns. We have so many other methods today of communication. We can communicate through apps, mobile phones. We don't need loudspeakers at all. In fact, we did a function at the National Institute of Design in January, where we had the entire college festival, including the closing speech by their director, music performances using mobile phones and mobile phone headphones connected to the source. It was a perfectly good open-air function. Everyone enjoyed it, but there was no noise. So it's up to you guys, finally, to take this up and do it. Take action without expectation of result. You neither know what the challenges are, nor do you know what result you're going to get. You don't know if it will be good or bad. This is the karma yoga, and that's what we're all living in. Today we are facing huge challenges. We can't quantify them. We don't know how they will end up, but don't take action because of that. Just keep taking action. Something will happen. Leave it. Something will happen. Thank you very much.